Good evening. So I'm gonna move kind of quick today because I gotta be up kind of early tomorrow for the drive for the road trip, and I'm going to be on the road for a little while, for several hours. So I definitely don't want to be sleep deprived while driving for a very long time. That's what some might call a not very ideal situation, and perhaps even a dangerous situation. So avoiding that seems prudent to me. Is there... Am I losing my shit? There it is. I caught a glimpse of it, and then I couldn't see it, and I didn't know what was happening, but fossil. Okay, hopefully we can find more than one today. And let's see what we got going on in here. Yeah. So today I've pretty much put the finishing touches on the track for Gorecore, at least for the... I did realize that I have put together the combat version for the track for Gorecore. I have not put together the non-combat version that will, of course, play when you're not in combat. And so I still gotta do that. I don't know how much time that's gonna take. Probably not quite as much as the combat version, because I feel like most of my time spent working on the combat version was just spent struggling with the mix. I, for some reason, decided to do a lot of weird stuff with the sound design for the track, and that created a lot of like weird problems in regards to the mixing. That I'm gonna plant some flowers. I haven't planted flowers anywhere in a bit. That were very difficult to try and figure out. So that was interesting, but I generally find with like non-EDM, I guess, like, of course it's still gonna be the same. It's like just a different version of the same song, so it's probably still gonna be... I mean, I guess it would be a different genre in a way, right? I mean, well, you could say it is the same genre, just a break instead of, you know, the drop, as they call it in EDM. Apparently that's not an EDM exclusive term. I really thought it was for a very long time, but it in fact is not. I think this is a good place for a money tree, so I'm going to invest all of this in that. A full 30,000, and hopefully that actually grows, because I've been getting really bad luck with those for a while now. Apparently drop is not like the I guess like bass drop is probably what I'm thinking of when I'm thinking of a term that is exclusive to EDM, that refers to the loudest, most exciting part of the song. But a drop, I think, is something that's used fairly universally for something like what a drop would be in like a dubstep track or something. So that's something I learned a while ago. Anyways, you could say it's the same genre, just a break in the track instead of the drop. And so, yeah, what was my point? What was I talking about? Yeah, so generally with EDM, it's the drops that are the most difficult to mix by far, because first of all, you're trying to maximize loudness in like every possible way, because the louder something sounds, the better it sounds. Like that is just a law of human hearing. If something sounds louder, then it sounds better. And that's, you know, that's probably a pretty big contributing factor to why, you know, a lot of hearing loss, because people just think louder sounds better, and so they turn everything up until it starts doing like actual damage to their ears. But that's not necessarily what loudness means when you're mixing. It more refers to like what is the right term? Like minimizing dynamic range, I guess. Is it? I thought I saw another buried thing here. I think I was actually just losing my shit that time. Minimizing dynamic range, making everything like really squashed. So like in digital and like audio engineering and digital stuff, electronic stuff, generally the way volume is measured is like so I was gonna say distance from 0 dB, but that really doesn't mean anything. But basically volume is measured like below 0 dB leading up to 0 dB. So most of the time the volume of something is actually going to be a negative dB value, because 0 dB is meant to be representative of the maximum amount a speaker can move back and forth, because, you know, like speakers move back and forth to create sound, and they can only move so much like forwards or backwards, and so that maximum amount they can move is 0 dB. And so for modern mixing standards, as is generally the words are not coming to me easy today, as is kind of the consensus on the current modern standard, from what I understand, is at least for electronic music, I mean, is that you should be mixing your music up to 0 dB. And it should never go over, but like, you know, you should push it up against 0 dB, and then especially with EDM and stuff, you really have to try and squash it as much as possible up at 0 dB to maximize that loudness, you know. Because the more squashed it is, I was explaining loudness. I guess I still technically am explaining loudness, but I don't know if that whole tangent was even relevant at all. I mean, I'm sure it was in some way, but basically what I was meaning to say, I guess, is that okay, conceived loudness is basically the concept that we're playing with here when I'm talking about mixing and mastering and stuff. No, perceived loudness, I think, is the actual smart person term, the one that people actually use, which is basically just saying the less dynamic range something has, the more it sounds louder to the listener. Whereas if like you compare a really a song that's really squashed with very little dynamic range between the like the average volume level and the highest peak. Okay, yeah, so a small amount of dynamic range means there's a very small amount of range between the highest peak like of the volume and the average level of the volume. But if you have a large amount of dynamic range, say you have a track where the snare drum, for whatever reason, is mixed way louder than anything else, like 5 dB louder, 5 decibels louder than the next highest sound in the track, or something like that, just as an example. 5 decibels is a massive amount of dynamic range, especially when you get up to close to 0 dB like that, because humans don't perceive, like with most of our senses, I think pretty much all of our senses, humans don't perceive audio linearly, they perceive it logarithmically, meaning that we can discern differences in volume like much easier when it's louder, and then when sounds are quieter, it's like they're all sort of compressed together, I guess you could say. And so when you're pushing your track up so that the highest dB or the highest peak reaches 0 dB, and there is a 5 decibel difference, like a 5 decibel, you know, amount of like range or whatever in your volume, it like that is an especially massive amount of dynamic range when you're that loud already, because the human ear is able to discern between, like, any volume difference that loud is just going to be like 10 times more dramatic, you know what I mean? And so how come I cannot find the money rock at all? What is my problem? And so when you have that I am so scatterbrained, I apologize. Anyone who actually knows anything about audio, like, I'm entirely self-taught. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about in reality. Anyone watching this who actually knows about audio and, you know, has been, like, trained in it or has gone to school in it, I just want to apologize to you for what I'm putting you through with this explanation. I don't even know why I'm talking about this. It's just what my brain sort of latched onto. But when you have that massive difference between the average volume and the highest peak, with the snare drum being like 5 dB above the average volume, yes, you know, technically the track goes up to the same volume level as the really compressed, like, squashed together track with very little dynamic range, but obviously, and this is a very dramatic example, of course, so that it's really, like, it's really obvious why, but this paper, oh my goodness, that's some, like, monster truck shit right there. It obviously, like, it's going to sound so much quieter because the average volume level is still very low. The average volume level is at -5 dB. And just because you have this snare coming in on every offbeat and playing like at 0 dB, that doesn't mean the track sounds as loud. It just means the snare drum is overtuned. So that's a very extreme example, but that is exactly what's happening when you know, when a small amount of or a large amount of dynamic range leads to a track sounding quieter, even when technically it isn't, because it's still peaking at 0 dB, you know. So yeah, that's and so you know, I just, going back through everything I've been talking about and, you know, bringing it back to the original topic is kind of a funny exercise sometimes. I think we're gonna wrap it up here because I do really have to like go to bed soon. So yeah, with like the drop, you're trying to make it sound as loud as possible because it's supposed to be the best part of the song. It's what people are listening to your song for, you know? And so it has to sound as good as possible, and for it to sound as good as possible, one of the like things it has to do is be as loud as possible. But that's not necessarily the case with the breaks. In fact, a little bit of dynamic range can sound really, really nice in breaks sometimes. And so that alone takes a whole like layer of complexity out of the mixing stage. And so I think it'll be a lot easier. I just have to actually write stuff that sounds good. Which is my job. So I better be good at that at this point, you know. I've been doing that for years already anyways, so I sure hope I can figure something out. But yeah, I guess that's it. Hope you enjoyed the extremely technical and boring lecture on audio engineering. What a fascinating subject. I mean, I find it fascinating, but, you know, not everyone's me. So, anyways, that's it. So, I will see you not tomorrow, in a few days, because I'll be out of town. So, see you then.